The Sunday Times, in their main news section, as I mentioned at the very top of the show, they allude to the fact that talks were concluding between John Delaney and the FAI, and that their parting would be imminent before the first report on October 7th into financial matters of the association. And the Sun did manage to turn things around. So on their front page, the Sun did manage to include the FAI statement. John gone, FAI confirms Delaney exit. Mark May on the front page there. So there isn't a huge amount. I mean, the Sunday Times, for what it's worth, did at the time yesterday write that lawyers representing both sides have been holding discussions that could lead to his position being clarified before the publication of the first report into financial matters October 7th. The FAI Board of Management, composed of 8 members, is unanimous. There's no way back for Delaney, which is no great surprise. And then, again, we're talking less than 600 words here. A golden handcuffs clause entitled him to $2 million for staying until 2021, they write, doubling his earnings. The transaction does not appear in the annual accounts. The settlement figure now being considered is thought to be less than what was in his contract. I mean...
I think it's no surprise the statement came out late, I think, with the Sunday Times versus John Delaney coverage over the last, 6 or 7 months. I think it's probably, they were asking questions all week and they wanted answers from the FAI, and they went to print at 11 p.m. and the statement comes out a few minutes later. So I think that's...
It's a coincidence.
Yeah.
Any payment, they say, to Delaney likely to be contentious, but senior FAI figures are believed to want him off the books before the reports are published. They're frustrated that the good work within the association has been overshadowed by his continuing controversy. And they write as well, Delaney believed to be receiving his full salary of $40,000 a month while on gardening leave as long as he cooperates with the investigation. So we don't know about the settlement. We don't know how much money he's received.
We just know it's done.
We know it's done. They want him gone.
There's not much in the actual papers today, but it is worth... I think if somebody wants to get something that captures, it's a catch-all of the entire story in one go. Danny McDonnell on the Indo website has done a really good job. I mean, I'm not great on word counts, but it's 8 A4 pages that you kindly printed off, Joe, for us. So I'm not sure how many thousand words that adds up to, but what it does add up to is a pretty comprehensive understanding of exactly where this is under the headline, how the cult of John Delaney somehow became a thing, which I really like as a headline.
Yeah. Anything jump out at you from the piece?
It's just what jumps out at me from the piece is all the signs, all the issues that are raised one by one, and when you put them down in one article and chronologically, well, not necessarily chronologically, but when you run through them as a collective, it's staggering is the word I would use. It is staggering to read, and it's, look, I think it's important to say there's 2 things that I think are important when this story is continuing to do the rounds, and no doubt more will come out and more things will happen. There's 2 groups of people that you have to be conscious of in this, and that's John Delaney's family, who are going to somehow feel the heat of this, and I feel for them, because any individual that's brought under this kind of scrutiny, their family somehow in their own communities, you've got to be aware of that. And secondly, the FAI employees, you know, and I know a lot of them and worked with them over the years, and it's incredibly tough on them. I feel very sorry for them under the circumstances, and you have to be conscious of them, but it's
been tougher on them over the last few years. A lot of them on lower pay.
It's brutal, and that's referenced in here. And I mean, it's absolutely brutal, and it's a really, like, it's a full stop. This press release and the end of the Delaney era, and there will be more paragraphs written, but it's a full stop in the story as things stand today. And Danny McDonnell does a really good job of just laying it out for you, and you make your own mind up on it.
Yeah, and there's one piece of news which is I think characteristic of a lot of what we know now about John Delaney in that piece, and it says it's understood that he would have preferred a longer departure statement than the short 4-paragraph effort that was low on achievements. So I think even in the dying minutes of the negotiations, there was still a wish to be seen as an extremely successful CEO of the organisation.
I don't get
even with all the different things that have been pointed out, particularly the one around the Aviva Stadium shambles, that, as Daniel MacDonald says, a shambles that would put the CEO of most businesses on a sticky wicket. So, and not in a negotiation with how much money we're going to leave with. It's while it's a full stop, I think there are still an awful
Oh yeah,
lot
no. I'm not saying that's
questions.
it. I mean, it's just that's the end of that chapter.
Yeah.
And it moves on from there. I have to go back. I don't get how the FAI, under the circumstances as we know them, end up releasing something at 11:15 last night. Like it feels like that. Even now, John Delaney's having to say on the way that this thing is going to be handled,
Yeah.
I find that for an association that, and look, I'm careful here, but these things happen in life, for right or wrong. Circumstances evolve, and associations, businesses find themselves in circumstances that they would not have walked into in a considered way, and they find themselves in those. How you handle them at that point is what marks you, and I understand that there are certain things that they cannot say and do, however frustrating the public might find that, however frustrating their own constituents might find that. I understand that. However, there are certain things that you can control, and there are certain things that are red lines. And releasing that at 11:15 last night is beyond my comprehension.
Well, it was reminiscent of the Gibraltar game when they released the news he was becoming executive vice president after the game very late that night. It's done in exactly the same style.
So you want to clean it up, and you want to say we're drawing a line here, and we are going to move on, and we accept what's happened here should not have happened, and we are going to do everything that we can publicly to assure you that it is now being taken care of, and there's some stuff we're just not going to be able to discuss. But this, you're kidding me.
Well, this merits a press conference.
Without a shadow of a doubt it does. And at that press conference, you sit and you say, look, you're going to ask me questions, Joe, that I'm simply not going to answer because there's a legal issue here, and they're not in conversations that I can have in the public domain. But there are things that we can talk about in the public domain, and we will do our best to answer those questions. But we're sitting here again in this fog of nonsense, and it feels like this has again been orchestrated to land at while all that rugby stuff is going on over there, and the newspapers are out, and Mark Times, Sunday Times are going to be over here. We'll put it in a place where we think it's going to have the least impact. I may be deeply unfair in saying that, but that's what it feels like.
Well, yeah, it does feel like the one side of the negotiation had this as one of their asks, that this goes out in a press conference after
A press statement rather than a press conference.
After newspapers, and particularly the Sunday Times, goes to print.
And I would have said this in my old life in RTE, like when you are in receipt of public money, whether you like it or not, you are answerable in a way that you are not answerable if you're working for a private organisation. And the FAI are in receipt of significant amounts of public money, as are the IRFU and the GAA and sport in this country in general. So there is a requirement to explain certain parts. Now, I'll say, having worked for RT, there were times I couldn't have conversations about why did you do that, why did you pay, or did you pay X, or what did you pay for Y? And you can't have those conversations because they're commercially sensitive conversations, and I respect that. But there is a level that you have to go further than you do if you work for an organisation that isn't in receipt of them. And I'm not on my own in saying this out loud. We're nowhere near this.
No. And even just with going past the money, and the money that John Delaney was getting, and the expenses and all that stuff that we've been hearing about, there are just questions as well. Like we were talking about the rugby there, tier 2, tier 1. Like, the League of Ireland is still the problem child, and no work has been done on that. There's the women, while lots has been done to grow the women's game, we're still way behind. So if you're looking at how far ahead other countries have gotten in the last 10 years on us when it comes to having a really strong women's football team, a women's football league, which obviously is quite far away to having any kind of strength there, and to having young girls play. Like we will continue to be a tier 2 team, but we absolutely should have a World Cup under our belt by now, and we don't. And look how far everyone else is ahead. And that's because of what has been happening. So it's not just about personalities and cults. And
but I agree with you on that. But I think there is a point where you have to draw a line in the sand and say you can't keep, you have to learn from the past, but you can't keep referencing the past for where you are at the present. Right now, now you've got to draw a line in the sand and say, that was then, it is what it is, because there's now nothing you can do about it. Fix it as best you can and put a strategy and a structure that means we will not be having this conversation in 3, 5, 7 years' time.
But you see, well, two things. One, it jumps out from Dan's piece to follow on your point that they've lost a decade here because they made such a botching of the Aviva Stadium ticket pricing. Like just a lost decade, people laid off, redundancies, pay cuts, all the while John Delaney seemed to be getting a very good salary and expenses to boot. We've been through all that. So there's that. And then the secondary point is, to follow on your point, Ryle, which is how do they fix it over the next 3 or 5 years? The Minister for Sport, the government is saying, Donald Conway, we would prefer if you stepped away now. And they have just said, no, we're not going to do that. So, and then the statement, the way this is handled, I mean,
just
really,
doesn't feel different
does
yet.
any of that feel like they're doing things the right way or in a very transparent way?
No, it doesn't feel like
really
a full stop yet. And it should be, I agree, Ryle, it should be. But it just does not feel like it. And we know how badly football in general is governed across the world. So there's no shining light here. There's no shining example. So you could look at what they did with the OCI after Rio, and you know that all changed very rapidly.
Yeah.
Like and so that's a precedent we have here, but it's a much smaller organisation.
Sure, it's more difficult. I wonder, is there a rush here to get this all tied up before this report comes out?
Can I just back up on that? I'm not sure that the principles are the same with what happened with the Olympics. And Sarah's come in and done an outstanding. Sarah Keane's come in and done an outstanding job of saying, and she's just I'm presuming that there's been stuff that she would have loved to have said out loud, but she couldn't. But she has said, here's where we are. By and large, has done her best to answer the questions that she has an ability to change. And then there has been a very clear, this is where we're going. Now, frankly, it doesn't matter whether you've got funding at €300, €3,000, €3 million, or €300 million. The principles are the same.
Yeah, so it should be. It could be a shining light. I think there's a lot of personnel that would get in the way rather than.
Sure. And boards
money.
And
that's what I meant.
I'm with you. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm finding it deeply frustrating that we're still in that, and I'm finding it deeply frustrating for the people that are, again, we referenced at the beginning, the people that work there, and the people who are the constituents of that want to see their sport run properly.
Let's move off that for now. And get through some other things. So, I've taken out a break. Sorry. Okay. We've done rugby and we've done the FAI. There's actually some really good pieces that we're going to finish off the paper review with